In September 2025, Nepal witnessed a historic wave of protests led predominantly by Generation Z students and young citizens. The movement erupted after the government imposed a nationwide ban on 26 social media platforms, including Facebook, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Signal, and Snapchat. This sudden restriction sparked outrage among young people, who relied on these platforms not only for communication but also as sources of news, education, work, and creative expression. For many Nepali youth, social media is more than entertainment. It is a lifeline, connecting them to the world and giving them a voice. The ban was seen as an attempt to silence dissent, and it came on top of long-standing frustrations with systemic corruption, economic inequality, and political mismanagement. The median age of Nepal is just 25, meaning a large portion of the population belongs to Generation Z. This demographic is highly active online, socially aware, and increasingly intolerant of political injustice. The social media ban became a tipping point that mobilized students, professionals, and young activists across the country. Organizers and youth participatory groups, such as HAMI Nepal, quickly used alternative digital spaces like Discord, Instagram, and local messaging networks to coordinate protests. Thousands of young people discussed strategies, shared safety tips, and debated the goals of the movement. Some even organized online mini-elections to propose candidates for interim leadership, demonstrating both creativity and political engagement rarely seen before in Nepal. By the 8th of September, large gatherings had formed in Kathmandu and other major cities. The demonstrations initially began as peaceful rallies, with protesters chanting slogans, holding banners, and marching toward government offices. The energy was electric, but tense, as the youth demanded accountability, transparency, and respect for their rights. However, tensions escalated when protesters attempted to enter government buildings. Security forces responded with tear gas, water cannons, rubber bullets, and, in some cases, live ammunition. Clashes broke out in multiple locations, resulting in injuries and, tragically, fatalities. Reports indicate that at least 19 people lost their lives during the initial protests, including children and teenagers. Thousands more were injured, with some requiring long-term medical attention. Despite the violence, the protests forced significant political change. On the 9th of September, Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli and several ministers resigned, acknowledging the widespread unrest. Shortly after, Sushila Karki, a former Supreme Court Chief Justice, was appointed as Nepal's interim Prime Minister, the first woman to hold this position in the nation's history. Meanwhile, President Ramchandra Poodle dissolved parliament and announced a new election date, signaling a major shift in Nepalese politics. The protests highlighted the deep frustration of Nepal's youth with systemic problems. Social media had amplified stories of political corruption, nepotism, and extravagant lifestyles of leaders, families. Images of leaders' children flaunting luxury abroad, contrasted with ordinary Nepali youth struggling with unemployment and poverty, ignited further outrage. Nepal's youth unemployment rate in 2024 was around 20.8%, meaning 1 in 5 young Nepalis had no formal job. Many had migrated abroad for work, including dangerous assignments like participating in foreign conflicts. By February 2024, over 15,000 Nepali citizens had joined the Russian military for financial incentives, a grim testament to the lack of opportunities at home. This backdrop of economic hardship amplified anger toward a government perceived as indifferent to its citizens' suffering. The unrest also caused widespread destruction of public infrastructure. Government offices were vandalized, prisons were attacked, and thousands of inmates escaped. Essential services were disrupted, creating a chaotic environment across cities. The scale of destruction reflected the intensity of frustration and the desperate demand for change. Youth activists continued to leverage online platforms, sharing updates, organizing aid for the injured, and documenting the unfolding events. Over 100,000 users participated in discussions on Discord, proposing candidates, debating policies, and helping guide interim leadership decisions. Remarkable instance of digital civic engagement. By the 13th of September, calm was gradually restored. The interim government pledged compensation to families of the deceased and injured, while authorities began efforts to rebuild infrastructure and restore public services. International organizations, including the United Nations and human rights groups, condemned the excessive use of force and called for transparent investigations. The Gen Z protests in Nepal stand as a powerful example of how young people can influence political outcomes. They demonstrated that digital communication is not just a tool for social connection, but a force for civic engagement, accountability, and activism. The movement reflected the frustrations of a generation determined to claim a voice in shaping the future of their country, demanding not just social media freedom but meaningful reforms in governance, transparency, and justice. Nepal's story serves as a lesson for governments worldwide. Ignoring the voice of youth, especially in a digital era, can lead to unrest and irreversible change. These protests are a reminder that the future belongs to those willing to stand up, organize, and fight for the society they envision.